Okay, so whenever I stream and stuff, normally it's a rule that we don't discuss religion, we don't discuss politics, right? It's not because I have no interest in those things, but it's because there's a lot of discussion about those things kind of elsewhere on the internet, everywhere on the internet, and frankly, the space that I've kind of carved out for us in my community, that's a space that I take to whenever I want to escape all that, right? I guess you can consider me an escapist VTuber if you want, because that's always been what my content has just kind of been like a place where we could just kind of like forget about the rest of the world for a little bit. But I'm kind of going to break that a little bit today, because the topic has kind of been broached a little bit every once in a while on streams, and I figured I probably owed it to everybody to give a little bit of a little bit of context, I guess. So we're breaking from that today. We're breaking for that for this video specifically. But yeah, for a period of time when I was younger, I was in a cult. How does one even define what a cult is? Well, I mean, I guess there's like definitions and stuff out there, but like how does one even know what a cult is just in general? I'll say that there are a lot of folks out there that are saying it was a cult. I feel it was a cult. It walked like a duck and quacked like a duck and all that other stuff. So like, and then I don't know, once I got out of it, looking back at it, it's like, yeah, that was kind of a cult. Like, that's shit. Like, I was in a cult. And I'll throw this out there. So it was Master's Commission. There are a bunch of them. I don't know, but like, it's out there, and it's associated with, they tend to be associated with churches, with like Christian churches. And the one that I was going to, we were, how to put this? We were kind of promised some college credit, like a college education that would go towards a, like whatever major we selected with the school that was there. We were partnered with like a kind of a Christian like school. And I was taking classes for credit, but in addition to that, my major there was Christian ministry. But in addition to that, we also did a lot of work for the church and lived in some kind of less than ideal conditions, and had a lot of shall we say religious practice, or a lot of kind of spiritual practices that were very, very, very cult-like. There was a very poor nutrition. there was a lot of sleep deprivation. There was a lot of manual labor. There was a shitload of gaslighting. But yeah, so how did I get there? I was prior to going there, I was going through a very, very low point in my life, and yeah, I'll just say it. So I was very strongly considering suicide. YouTube's is officially just decided that it's not gonna send this video to anybody, but I don't give a damn. I'm throwing it out there. And my family kind of had a little bit of an intervention. I was like going to church and stuff at the time, and my family are all, they're all very, very devout churchgoers, which, you know, at the time I was as well. But so they kind of had this little, like, it was kind of an intervention kind of deal, I suppose. And I was feeling just incredibly directionless at the time. And this Master's Commission, they had just come through and like done a bunch of work at our church, which was the outreach that they did, where like they would like go to a bunch of different churches, and they would work at those churches, and they would sleep and eat at those churches while they were in town, usually. And the whole purpose of that was to try and like get people to like sign up, to try and get people to like come join this movement and get like experience in in ministry, get experience like working with the church as though it was your day job, to prepare you for that being your day job. And at the time, I was like, I don't know that that's I don't know that that's like a career that I necessarily would have chosen for myself, but my family was very insistent that it was like a sign and totally the thing I should do to like get some college education. So I did it. So I went ahead and signed up. Didn't have any idea where the money for this was going to come. Yes, there was money involved, and because like of course there is. And so I signed up, and then that next year I spent a couple months prior to that kind of preparing to go, like, getting my stuff together and like getting ready to move and all that stuff. And then I moved up there. This was, when I say I moved up there, I moved to a place that was like, about a day's drive away. At the time, I had sold my vehicle to prepare to go, and I rode up. I essentially carpooled with another guy that was like going from the same church, and we were just gonna go up there. So we did, and then he was there for like 4 or 5 days, like in the program with us, and then he was like, "Nope, I'm going home. I don't want to do this. I'm leaving." There were a number of people who did that, and realistically, that could have been a red flag. But it was like, and it was crazy, like going into it. They were very adamant that like, no, we're not a cult. This is definitely not a cult. People might say that this is kind of a cult, but it's definitely not. You should trust me on this. It's not a cult. Just don't even listen to those people, because it's, you're gonna get experience, and you're gonna get a college, like you're gonna get some college credit, and you're gonna maybe you get like a job out of this, and you're gonna grow so much spiritually. And it was a thing. So there definitely was like a charismatic figure. There was like a leader, and he was a pastor at the church that we were going to, and everyone was like, okay, so like we answer to this dude. This dude tells us where to be and when, and tells us when we can sleep and can't, and like we journal. We're responsible for journaling every day and turning in a journal at the end of the week that he will then read. And then like maybe not even say anything about for months, and then like if he's got some kind of issue with you later on down the line, he might pull it out and be like, "See, you wrote these things several months ago." Living conditions were not great. One time I remember somebody like accused somebody else of stealing drinks out of their mini fridge or something, and like he ended up like having us like run laps and doing push-ups and stuff like that, until somebody confessed. And in the end, nobody fucking did. And all like the thing that was really scary about that is that like some of the quote unquote students, some of the other folks in the program were like had like some pretty serious like physical concerns that like they shouldn't have been doing that. Anyway, there was a lot of stuff like that, and a lot of the time, if anybody like questioned any of it, if anybody was like, "No, I don't want to do this," or like, "No, I don't think you should have so and so doing this. I don't think you should have so and so in these conditions or doing whatever," then it was always like it always immediately came back to like, "Well, I'm your spiritual father." that was a term that got thrown around a lot. So it's like, okay, ultimately kind of what it boiled down to is like, well, God put me in charge of you. So if you disobey me, then you disobey God. And like in no terms that were any more uncertain than that. Like, dude, the leader dude who was there, he and a lot of like the senior kind of students were always very adamant about like in the whole like, no, we're not a cult thing. They were always very adamant about like, one of the things they would always say is like, one of the few things that we don't have in Master's Commission is Kool-Aid, because everybody's like, thinks that that's very cult-like. But it's also hilarious that like we drank Kool-Aid the entire time we were there. Anyway, so we were not allowed to like date the first year. I was there for a year. I stuck it out because I felt that I had a religious obligation to, but I was not a lot of the like I didn't, how do I put this? they had a lot of mantras and stuff. They had a lot of phrases that you know, everyone would kind of repeat verbatim, and I would repeat those and like not believe it, but like everyone else did, like, very quickly. And I think that's really the thing that kind of freaked me out, was like towards the end of the year, I was like, these guys are taking this like to heart. Like these guys are taking this like really, like they're not, they're like, it was weird to see everybody's like critical thinking just like dissolve under that stuff, you know? Anyway, well, so we weren't allowed to date the first year. Dating in general, regardless of what year you were in, was very, very heavily frowned upon. Any kind of romantic attachment was just incredibly frowned upon. Any kind of any attachment to anyone outside of the group was heavily frowned upon. It was really frowned upon to like be in contact with family or friends outside of the group. You weren't allowed to hold down a job. Or if you were allowed to hold down a job like during the summer, whenever the group wasn't like there, if that makes sense. I remember the guys all lived in one house. It was a house on the premises of the church that had been constructed explicitly for this, I think. Or maybe it hadn't been constructed for this, maybe it was constructed for something else, but like there were like, I think 20 something guys in the same house. And there were like 15 or 16 rooms, so like most of the guys had to like were like 2 dudes to a room, you know. The girls, I think they also shared rooms, but they were split among like 4 different houses, I think, if I remember, or they were split among like a bunch of different houses. And had to wake up very early every morning. Had to like go to the gym and stuff, which that was cool. That like it was nice to be able to like have a gym like subscription and just like go. But there was, I mean, I'm saying that for my sake, but like there were some folks who like medically, like they really shouldn't have been there. They really shouldn't have been doing that, dude. And then there were right, so like right after that, it was like we're doing like the prayer stuff like every day. Like we were just immediately like go from the gym to the church, and then like do prayers for like a good like several hours. Maybe a couple hours. Maybe like an hour and a half most days, I think. Anyway, and then like we had some classes and stuff, and that was honestly, I think that was fine for the most part. There were students at those classes that were not a part of the group, and they were also like you were encouraged not to like socialize with them very much. And then beyond that, it was just we did a lot of work. We did a lot of work for the church and for like people at the church that like needed, just if somebody at the church needed yard work done, then like they would go to they would bring it up with the church, and then the church would like send a group of us out there to do yard work. You know what I mean? We didn't get paid for it. we just went because like we were learning how to serve. You know what I mean? We were learning how to like do ministry, and like again, looking back on it, like it should not have been like that. There were like money concerns like the whole time that I was there. They were like I constantly had somebody in the group like coming to me being like, "Hey, do you have your money figured out yet? Like, do you have how you're going to pay us figured out yet? Because like you need to get that handled." It was a wild experience. I did maintain some connections outside of the group for the whole time. Maybe that's why I feel like I got out of it without like being quite so overtaken, I guess, by like the thinking the same things as everyone else. I don't know. There were a couple of people who like there was one person who their family basically came and got them. They were like, "Nope, we don't think you should be here. We're taking you out." And I found out later that this person's family took them out because they were like, "No, this is definitely a cult." And that was not something that was brought up at all. We also had I think it was weekly? We also had these like weekly kind of like group therapy sessions that were referred to as like surgery, because you would go in and you would talk about all this, like you were encouraged to share some like very deep stuff. You were encouraged to share, you're encouraged to like discuss your trauma and stuff like that. And it looked kind of like therapy, but the end goal of it was always that you needed to be closer with the group. You needed to give up your like, you needed to give up attachment to anything outside of the group, and you needed to be like a better part of the group. In the years after that, looking at other people discussing it online, other folks are also like, yep, it's definitely a cult. Definitely didn't think it was a cult. It's definitely a cult. There's definitely like one charismatic person. There's like that, like it's like watching somebody play Guitar Hero like on Master. Just every single check mark is like, it's got it and it's there, and it's like, that's fucking freaky. Thank you for allowing me to rant. This still does not mean that we're discussing politics or religion on my stream, but again, this topic has been broached a couple times on stream, and I felt like a little bit of an explanation or a little bit of a discussion was kind of owed. I'm fine now. I'm also not in the church in any way now, but I've had quite a lot of time to kind of sit with those experiences and digest them and kind of work through that a little bit. Anyway, here we are. Thanks for listening to me rant. If you're still here, I appreciate it. You the real one. Leave a comment if you want, or don't. I don't care. I'm probably not going to read the comments on this one. I tend to like read and respond to comments a lot, but probably not this one. Okay, I'm going. Bye. Goodbye. Thanks for being here. I'm Joey. Bye.